The last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan. In the Arabic khutbah, I spoke longer today. Usually the Arabic khutbah is much shorter than this, but because of the technicality of the subject of identity of the Hilal and the new crescent, and for those of you who didn't follow the language of that khutbah, very briefly, we have a problem every year in the beginning of Ramadan and in the end of Ramadan, and sometime in the Hajj, Eid al-Adha, and recently even Ashura's day, how to identify the right time. Although the moon is the closest planet to the earth, and is moving, traveling around the earth all the time, and it takes less than 30 days to complete its journey around us, around the earth. And we know that the horizon on this earth is not that far. I mean, from now where we are here to like China, from California to other part of this planet, we have like 12 hours difference of time. So it makes sense to have difference that much, 12 hours. But sometimes we have like 2 days, 3 days. Like we make it like 70 hours of difference between one part of this planet and another part. So how come that in one area, 1 day is Eid, and in another area, 3 days later, we have an Eid? So really, we have this situation that is not matching with the reality of this planet. We know that the distance of moon to the earth is almost 240,000 miles. Is not that much when you consider like Mars, for example, that it is almost 500 times more distant from the earth, because different distance between the earth and the Mars, and it gets to sometime to the point of 250 million miles. That is distance between the earth and the Mars. And you just recently heard about this NASA that they landed another time for the 7th time on the Mars, and they put that robot car on the planet. I heard that they spent $2 billion just for that small cars with 6 wheels that last week landed on the Mars, and they are spending billions and billions of dollars on this, and to see what is going on the Mars. We don't care what's going on in Gaza or what's going on even in downtown Detroit, to put a few more policemen to stop all these crimes. But then we spend like billions and billions of dollars, just $2 billion just for that car, for a robot machine. And it doesn't include the money NASA has been spending the last like 50 years for the research team. So if human beings is able to land on the Mars, which is 500 times more distant from the Earth, then how come we have that much complication to see even the moon, and we have all these problems to identify that when is the first day of Ramadan and when is the Eid al-Fitr, while the astronomy can even send through the laser identify whether the moon is out of mihab, out of the darkness, is the moon is born or not. So we have this problem that the solution is to have a better understanding between the traditional ways of approaching the identity of the new moon and the modern way. So there should be an islah and reconciliation between al-fiqh wal-falak, between the religious scholars and between the scientists, to deal this matter that is not as complicated as we think. if the science, if the astronomy is able to predict the eclipse, al-khusuf, al-kusuf, even 100 years earlier, they know that in 100 years or 200 years from now, when there is going to be eclipse in the moon or the sun. If we know that much, so it's really, it's not just if you just go out and with your own eyes see the moon. First of all, now with all this pollution, we cannot see it anymore. You live in all these cities and all this pollution is impossible. There should be other way. So it's not that just to see is the matter. The matter is to get the knowledge when really the moon is out of the mahab and is born and started the movement of being the first day of the Ashahr al-Qamari, the new month. That is the subject. The knowledge about it is the subject. If you can get it through looking with your naked eyes, and that brings confidence, that's fine. But there are so many other ways, and especially with the science and astronomy, which is different from astrology. Astronomy is something, astrology is something else. We are not thinking about those people who do the magic thing through the astrology and say, oh, give your money, I can look at your hand and I can tell you that what's going to happen to your marriage like 10 years from now. No, we are not talking about this kind of, cheating business. We are talking about real science that deals with the real fact. And we have to really admire Marhum Sayyid Fadlullah that he was not the only one, but he was the one who brought this matter to the eyes of everyone and made it very strong. And he had this courage to start these things that many people have been talking about it. But he made it like a fatwa, and hopefully in a matter of years and years, we are going to have a time that, the time of unity when it comes to UFO, when it comes to this matter, that then we have a better understanding. It's not that the husband says, I'm muqallid of this marja, today is my Eid, and the wife is, I'm muqallid of that marja, tomorrow is my Eid, and we have like 2-3 different Eids in the same family. It's not that ufuq Shia, ufuq Sunnah. It's not. It's even the Shia themselves, the Sunni themselves. We have to solve this problem, and the science and astronomy can help us to solve this problem. And Islam is religion of science. Islam does respect science, and the Quran is full of verses that talk about universe and nature, and that means that we should be able to solve this problem. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The conclusion is the occasion of today, the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan, that Marhum Imam Al-Khomeini Quddat Sirro announced the last Friday of every month of Ramadan as the day of Quds, to show solidarity and support for the victims of injustice and oppression everywhere in the world, and especially the Palestinians. Today, the day of Quds, is the day of help and support for the victims, for those people who have been living under occupation, oppression for 64 years. And of course, support for them is not just to go and have a sign standing in front of the city hall and say, we are, admiring Yom Quds, or go to the park, or, just driving our cars and thinking really, then we feel relaxed that we did our duty. We liberated Masjid al-Aqsa, we went and, stayed like 1 hour in front of. This is not the real support. It's good, let us do this. But the Palestinian situation is in need of action. And we have to be courageous, we have to be sincere, and we have to be honest when we deal this matter. Not with hypocrisy and, no, I'm more revolutionary than you, and I just take this photo or take this sign and, then I go home and, okay, I did my duty. This is not really the real support for Palestinians who've been living under occupation and injustice and intimidation and ethnic cleansing for 64 years. 64 years of denying the dignity of a nation and depriving them from their basic human rights. 64 years of terrorism and assassination. 64 years of occupation. And they are not over yet. They got it in 1948, but they are not satisfied with what they had. Even now there is a psychological and civil war in the Middle East. And I just read this former Mossad chief of Israeli, Yaton. He was saying that we are worried about the missiles, the missiles of the Muqawimah in Lebanon and also in Gaza, and says they can cover all Israel, and this is our main problem. Then he said, we may have to destroy parts of Lebanon and entire Gaza Strip. Can you imagine? It says, just because we are afraid. So you have hundreds of atomic bombs, and nobody should be worried, and nobody should do anything about you, but you think that there are a few missiles somewhere, and you are saying you want to destroy parts of the Lebanon. What do you mean? You want to use atomic bomb? What do you mean by destroying parts of the Lebanon and Gaza? Entire Gaza. Look at this, entire Gaza. Yes. Well, even the time that there was no missile in Lebanon, in 1948, you destroyed Deir Yassin and all these villages and towns that you destroyed and demolished. Why you did that at that time? Were you worried about, missiles, or anybody was threatening you militarily at that time? Another statement from Matan, the Israeli civil defense, he just said it last Wednesday. He says, war with Iran. Now it's not about Gaza and Lebanon. Now look at this guy. He said, war with Iran would probably turn to a month-long conflict and some 500 Israeli dead. He said, well, we calculated that if we start, it's going to take us 1 month, and we lose 500 Israelis, but looks like he is saying that, well, we are ready for that. My goodness, this is a language of death and destruction and terrorism and threatening everyone in the area. And then, who is going to pay for that? Number one, the Saudis are there to pay. The Israelis and the Saudis are common in the sense that let us kill everybody who doesn't like us in the Middle East. And also the American taxpayers, they should pay the bills for such a war. And the American soldiers should act like puppets for the Israelis to do that job for them. All is about war and terrorism and destruction, and they are using the election time in the United States that how we can play the game of Obama and Romney and others and taking advantage that you are more Israeli, the other guy is more Israeli, how we can take advantage of all of these things. Fortunately, there are people of honesty even in Israel. I read that 400 Israelis, including some professors from Tel Aviv universities, they wrote a letter to Israeli soldiers and Israeli pilots and saying that if you were ordered to bomb Iran, disobey that order. They told the soldiers and the pilot that you may lose your job, you might be prosecuted, but it is better to lose your job and be prosecuted than obeying blindly wrong orders, because that is wrong, and that war that may deal with the destruction of those sites may bring radioactive material in the area, and that can be a war, a criminal, a crime war. They are threatening this. But unfortunately, these are only 400 Israelis. Can these 400 Israelis do the job and stop some illegal thing compared to the majority? That's something that we have to think about it. But unfortunately, when we look at the Middle East, on the day of the Quds, we don't see the support for the Palestinians. We don't see any demonstration. What we see, this is a mess, explosion in Baghdad, now in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, hostage taking in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq,